Coming up on Bloom, how to navigate uncomfortable conversations, which includes your financial health.
Hey, we need to have a consult, if it's over $1,000. If you're going to spend over $1,000, we need to have a family meeting about it. Or for your kids, if you're going to spend more than $50, we're going to have a family meeting about it.
Plus, meet a man on a mission to educate other guys about breast cancer. And meet a top female Sarasota executive chef serving up a spring chopped salad. We'll have all that and more as Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging, starts now. I'm Gayle Guyardo. Welcome to Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging. We're talking about uncomfortable conversations today, ones you might not want to have, but you should. And we're starting with your money health. Discussing money makes many people feel vulnerable or exposed, maybe even judged. But by normalizing conversations about finances, you can become empowered to take control of your financial well-being. Joining me now from Power Women Investing is behavioral financial coach, Tiana Ronstadt. It's so good to see you, Tiana.
It's so nice to be back. Thank you.
So let's talk about why money is so uncomfortable for people to talk about.
It really boils down to any types of shame that you create because of decisions you've made in your past, right? So whether that means I have a lot of debt or I'm embarrassed by how I was raised. And so folks just bring that, and yet they don't, in the dating and then obviously the courtship and then obviously the relationship, they don't say, oh, here's some dirty laundry that I haven't really shared.
Well, what's interesting is that, most marriages break up over two things: money or sex. And so we're leading off the show today with something that impacts everybody, and that's the bottom line of money. So how do you start to make this a more comfortable conversation?
So to start with, I think it's important that each person identify really where they're vulnerable in their money conversation. And whether that, again, we mentioned debt, we mentioned obviously a lot of times with spending, as well as there's this financial infidelity, where do I have an account elsewhere? Or do I have things that haven't actually told you? And so making sure that you set an appointment, set an agenda about that one topic, and then show up like we talk about in anything, really, anything that you're going to resolve in conflict, right? But this is money. So it's important to show up, be an active listener, and say, okay, I'm willing to listen to you as us, not me, and then come up with a resolution.
So I want to ask a question about the separate accounts, and this is a personal one, and it might be, a common one that a lot of people are like, hey, we do it the same way. But my husband is very financially literate. He's a CPA, he's licensed, he knows everything about money. But he's also got everybody on these apps. I mean, you spend a penny in our house, bing, Mint lets him know. And so, and he'll be like, oh, did we order blah, blah, blah. And he's not trying to be overbearing, although sometimes it feels that way. He just likes to keep a control of everything. And so I'm like, can I just keep a small bit of money, like a bit that we know exactly what the price point is in this account, so that if I want to go buy Cheetos tomorrow, I'm not going to be like, were you the one that bought the Cheetos? And so is that okay? Because sometimes it gets a little bit annoying, and I do appreciate him, because when it comes time to take a vacation and it comes time to do big things, the money is always there because of him being so prudent.
Right, and the planning. That's really what I hear.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the short answer is yes, because right? And so every couple, I do think it's really important, especially too with your kids, to have a buffer amount. In other words, hey, we need to have a consult, if it's over $1,000. If you're going to spend over $1,000, we need to have a family meeting about it. Or for your kids, if you're going to spend more than $50, we're going to have a family meeting about it. But otherwise, I'm not going to ask you about that account that you have just for yourself. And I actually encourage that, especially for women that don't work. You need to have your own account that you don't feel like, wait, somehow I've created a relationship now that I'm being paid to be in this relationship. That's not a good one either, right?
Right.
So you do want that. When I speak of financial infidelity, that's really, I'm doing something behind your back. I'm actually squirreling money away without you knowing it, because I don't feel comfortable having a conversation. And again, it's not a fun conversation, but I always say, set that agenda, set one topic that you're going to talk about. Both of you come knowing the topic. Set a timer. It's really important that we have a specific time that we're going to talk about it, meaning the buzzer's going to go off and we're done. Okay? And then plan something that you two enjoy doing, whether that's going on a long walk, doing something together that's going to create fun, that you don't have this gloom and doom over your money meeting.
Interesting. All right, let's talk about inheritance, estate planning, things like that.
So that is a big one, right? So the biggest thing that I ask folks is, are you going to expect an inheritance, or are you going to be responsible financially for your parents or a family member? If you aren't sure of the answer to that question and you haven't talked to your partner about that, that's important. That's one of those, I would say, add that to the agenda item, right? Because it's important to know both of those are going to cause a transition in your life. Both of them. So we want to know what that looks like and what to expect. And then you have the next conversation with that couple, meaning with your parents, your in-laws, or a family member, that either you're going to inherit their problems, it's okay, or their money.
If you do inherit that money and then you want it to stay as part of your family lineage, is that even possible?
100%. And that's, again, goes to this separate account. When you inherit any money personally, you always want to keep it in your name only. The minute you commingle it, it now is joints with rights to survivorship. You've now given up that. So I do advise in inheritance to always keep the money with the person that has inherited it. And then make sure on that account you have, the acronym is TOD, transfer on death. That's just meaning Tiana Ronstadt, my TOD then are our children.
All right. Tiana, great information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to share Tiana's advice on BloomTampaBay.com. And when we come back, meet a Tampa man getting an important conversation going nationwide about men's breast health. But first, it's time for today's Bloom Trivia question. Which country has the highest inflation? Venezuela, Argentina, or the United States? We'll have the answer later on Bloom. You're watching Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging, saving lives through early detection. Call now, 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today. Living the Tampa Bay lifestyle means enjoying the sand, sun, and outdoors fun. So get out, get active, and nurture those healthy habits. Hey there, I'm Gayle, Guyardo, host of Bloom. Now there's a new all-inclusive place with everything you need to shape your lifestyle, boost your health, and improve your wellness. BloomTampaBay.com, Tampa Bay's premier health and wellness website, made to help you feel good. Whether you're a fitness fanatic, beauty buff, or just want to take your first step towards positive change, this free website is for you. See the Bay Area's hottest fitness products, the latest workout crazes, and learn nutrition tips from the experts. Plus, discover local events and experiences designed with your well-being in mind. Cultivate a healthy mind, body, and soul. Check out BloomTampaBay.com, your local health and wellness website. That's BloomTampaBay.com. Breast cancer is more common in women, but it is something men need to know about too. Joining me now is breast cancer survivor Ben Porsche, who is spreading the important message to all men about how to find out if they're at risk. Ben, it's so great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your story.
So it started back in 2019. My sister passed away from breast cancer. It was her second round. And then almost a year later, my father was diagnosed with breast cancer. So the rest of the family decided we would take the BRCA2 gene mutation test, and I discovered that I was positive for BRCA2, and my younger sister was negative, my brother was positive as well. The recommendation at that time was to start doing mammograms, essentially doing a scan like women do, and I started that in 2021 and had another in 2022. Both were negative. And then interestingly enough, a year ago today was when I had the scan that showed positive for cancer cells.
So then what happened next?
So they said, let's do a biopsy to confirm the diagnosis. The biopsy occurred almost a month later in April, and they confirmed that it was cancer. And the recommendation at that time, I was being treated by some fantastic doctors at right here at TGH, Dr. Angela Kelleher, and the recommendation was to do a bilateral mastectomy. So they removed the tissue, and given the family history, it was only present in one side, but given the family history, rather, let's be safe, and did both sides.
So I know this is something that you talk about how your wife was there by your side, and when we think about breast cancer and we hear stories from women, we think, man, what a journey that is. But it's a journey for men too. I mean, it's difficult, and your wife was right there with you.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was trying to get, being the funny guy that I am, I was trying to get our annual checkups in the same place so we could walk in together. But being BRCA2 positive, the technology is a little bit different. So I was having diagnostic scans where she was having routine. So they did them in different places. But as you say, she's been by my side from the very beginning. She knew what it meant once I was fortunate in that the pathology of my cancer cells was responsive to hormone therapy, whereas my dad's was triple negative, which is the most serious of the kind, and he had to go through chemo and radiation, whereas I was treated with hormone therapy.
Now, I was lucky enough to meet you and your lovely wife through social setting, and I really appreciated that. And I also appreciated the fact how open and honest you were about your journey and your willingness to share it with other men. Why is this so important to you?
Like I said, I lost my sister. My father was diagnosed with it. I was diagnosed with it. And as you mentioned, it's just not that common for people to know. And it's a very simple test to determine if you're BRCA2 positive. We use the color genetics diagnostics, which is a simple, you order the kit, comes with little tubes, literally spit in the tube, send it off, and they send you back the report. And then what's also important is post-test, they connect you with some really good genetics to help you understand and interpret the details of the report and make recommendations on what steps you might want to take next.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned the simplicity of the test, because not to stereotype men, but stereotypically, it's harder to get a guy to go, I have to drag my husband to the doctor where I'm there before they even call my name. And so this is, the test you say is relatively easy. Mm-hmm. Who should be taking this?
Anyone that has a family history of breast cancer. Like I said, I've done a lot, after I learned about my sister's breast cancer, we started doing a lot of discussion, like you say, that, the difficult conversation. We learned that my grandfather had a lump removed. We don't know what it was, but we know he had a lump removed. His two sisters passed away from breast cancer, and then one of his sister's sons was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So there was a significant family history. So I highly recommend anybody who has cancer history in their families, order the test, and you'll know.
So what does your care journey look like now? Like, what are doctors recommending now that you've been treated? What's mm-hmm. next?
Yeah, so I'm doing hormone therapy to treat to lower the chances that it might recur, and then being BRCA2 positive. It also has a slightly elevated chance of other cancers like pancreatic cancer or prostate cancer. So I'm doing regular screenings for those as well.
And again, you said you found this fantastic treatment at Tampa General Hospital. And do they connect you? You also mentioned genetics and getting tested for all that. Do they steer you to all the right people?
Yes. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop with the TGH Cancer Center. Dr. Kelleher's been fantastic. Her physician's assistant, Marley White, was great. She was the one who met with me to help me see the scans and understand what they had found prior to the biopsy. And then they connected me with the genomics department there at TGH to help me understand what the genes were telling and what other treatments I might want to pursue, like being tested for pancreatic cancer, et cetera.
Well, I'm so sorry about your sister's loss, but appreciative about your journey and wishing you all the best in your future health and everything. And thank you for sharing the story.
Thank you.
And we're going to share Ben's incredible health journey on bloomtampabay.com. And when we come back, the psychology behind why we tend to avoid tough conversations. Bloom, we'll be right back. You're watching Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging, saving lives through early detection. Call now 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today. Welcome back to Bloom. Many of us tend to shy away from uncomfortable conversations, but mustering up the courage to do so can be very beneficial. Joining me now with ways to break the ice is clinical psychologist Dr. Carlos Garcia. Dr. Carlos, it's so great to see you.
Always such a delight to be here.
So this is a good one. Uncomfortable conversations, they're so hard to have. First, let's start with the why.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable, especially I think in relationships because, there's a truth to this, Gayle. We're sometimes afraid of our own emotions, right? Especially the sticky ones, the vulnerability, the fear, and some of that stuff. But we're especially uncomfortable with other people's emotions sometimes. And so I think we tend to shy away from those because of the things that may come up. We might hold fear that of judgment, right, from others, or that we're going to be perceived in a certain light. I always talk about sort of going back to our roots and kind of the early relationships that we had, and how those inform the relationships we have later on as adults. So, if we had relationships early on that fostered a sense of safety and courage to speak, then that's probably how we're going to show up in our adult relationships. However, if we had some, caretakers or parents that maybe didn't validate our feelings often, we might have learned to have sort of repress our emotions or hide them away. And so it becomes really uncomfortable to talk about those vulnerable things as adults.
So, but you say learning to do so really is critically important for our own well-being. Why is that?
Well, just the outward sort of expression of any sort of emotions or things that we carry. I think one of the things that we tend to do as adults, is in the service of not stepping into that fear of the uncomfortable conversation, we start to make assumptions about what the other person is thinking. Right?
So true.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about an uncomfortable conversation
totally.
I really want to have.
Yeah.
But I have it in my head what I think they're thinking, and I'm tapping the brakes.
And they're doing the same.
Okay.
And so here you can take this sort of just general neutral event, and two people are perceiving it from two very different places, from their own lens. And so having these conversations is important because we can get the material out on the table and say, okay, what's on your mind or what's on your heart, right? What are you feeling? What are you thinking about this? And if we can do that more from a place where we're making it welcoming, right? I always talk about, because I do a lot of couples counseling, I talk about, the objective is not to not have hard conversations. Difficult things are going to arise, but if we can create a container, a space where we can arrive and feel that it's going to be held with non-judgment, with love, and with compassion, then we're more able and it becomes easier to step into that space to speak and talk.
Now, you talk about attachment theory that plays in a role in adult relationships. So did we cover that, or is that something separate?
Yeah, I mean, attachment theory, if I can sort of explain it really briefly, comes from the work of psychologists in the 70s and 80s. And essentially what it's saying is, again, those early relationships, how we experience them as babies and children, inform how we have our relationships later on as adults. So a secure attachment style means that every time we had sort of an emotional or physical need, it was met with comfort, it was met with compassion, it was met with love, and with a bonding. We might have developed an anxious attachment, meaning at times when we were in distress, maybe it was met with, some form of consoling, but maybe other times it wasn't. So we developed this sort of anxiety, this uncertainty about, are my needs going to get met or are they not? There's also an avoidant attachment style, which means probably most of the time our needs were not met with any kind of comforting, and so we learn to put up walls and sort of be an island, right? We push people away inadvertently. And so this happens for a lot of us as children. It's just kind of a basic psychological principle, and we don't realize the way it informs many of our relationships as adults.
You know, I think over the years, I've become a lot better with having difficult conversations and just sharing how I feel and trying to leave an open dialogue. But I think when I fear the outcome, that's when it becomes so tough. So, you know, like the rejection, like maybe you're trying to mend a fence, or maybe you're trying to find common ground. I think when you fear rejection, or that that it's not going to land well, that will stop you. So what do you do?
Yeah, I think one thing to understand is that, again, a lot of that is wired into us, right? We have that fear because in humans and in many species of animals, a break of that bond between the caretaker and the sort of young child means everything, right? And so if we experienced a lot of events early on where that bond felt like it was a rupture, like there was a tear, like it felt, it didn't feel good on the feelings or in our minds, then we develop this kind of preconceived notion that if I express myself, if I put something out there, it might be met with that same thing. So a lot of that is just old narratives from our past that we need to let go of, to acknowledge that, yeah, sometimes we might be met with rejection, but that doesn't mean a rejection of us as a person. It might be just a rejection of that idea, of that belief, of that opinion. And so if we can sit in ourselves and be more rooted in confidence that us as a person is not being rejected, then it's a lot easier to sort of bring up the courage and the bravery to have that hard conversation.
Dr. Carlos, as always, I love talking to you. I feel like I
Thank
walk
you,
away
Gayle.
with my own personal nuggets. All right, we're going to share Dr. Carlos's advice on BloomTampaBay.com. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. We're back. Sometimes the people we're the closest to are the hardest ones to talk to, especially when it comes to our love life. As we continue with uncomfortable conversations you need to have, we're joined by top Tampa sex therapist, Dr. Gina Midyett. Great to see you, Dr. Gina.
Hi, great to see you as well. Thank you.
So let's talk about, difficult conversations. And you say it starts by breaking the stigma.
It does. So the hardest thing to do is to have difficult conversations in a relationship, especially about sex, because there's so much shame and stigma behind it, and we just don't want to talk about it.
But important that we do. So how do you navigate it?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to create a safe place for your partner, because I think that the hardest thing is to just even start the conversation and what to expect. So there's that fear of, well, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to get rejected, I'm going to be made fun of. So really having that understanding with your partner that we're going to be able to have these conversations and I'm going to feel safe with you.
Okay, so you set up some boundaries. Now, what if it's a newer relationship and you get to a point and you want to navigate maybe health concerns?
Yeah, so one thing that a lot of my couples come to talk to me about is hygiene. I know it sounds so silly and simple, but talking to your partner about hygiene, there's something that doesn't smell right or feel right, and sometimes it could be as simple as changing your hygiene, or it could be a medical concern, but we're so embarrassed to talk to our partners about it because we don't want them to feel embarrassed. But it's better to talk about it than to build resentment over time, and then the relationship won't last.
That's an interesting one. What about differences in desire?
Yeah, so desire is something that can change. Sometimes you have a higher desire, sometimes it's lower, and one partner can have more than the other. But there could be deeper issues as well. It could be that we associate love with sex. So if we're not getting sex from our partner, we feel unloved. Or it could be an underlying anxiety where maybe we are just feeling really anxious, so we need sex to relieve our anxiety. So just having that conversation and make sure it's not something deeper, and it's not just desire, it's something deeper.
What about cultural or religious aspects?
Yeah, so this is a big thing, especially in the beginning of a relationship, to talk about cultural differences, because sex is viewed differently in all cultures and religions. It could be something about even inhibitions, or I know that we've talked in other shows about my Catholic upbringing where there was a lot of shame about sex, and I didn't want to talk about it with my partner. So having those conversations, those uncomfortable conversations, so that you can get through those things.
Yeah, I grew up in the Catholic Church as well. I'm at a different church right now, and I thought it was really interesting. They dedicated an entire month of services to relationships, and that included relationships with your spouse. And they did talk about that, about how at a very young age, many of us were taught it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, and it kind of gives you a warped scope of what it should be like. And you know, even biblically, it's important to have a union with your spouse, your partner. So, you know, how do you get past that if you have people on two different levels?
Yeah, I think it's really redefining what sex and what intimacy is for you and your partner. So whatever happened in your past that's behind you, you can't erase it, but you can replace it with new ideas and new ways to view sexuality and view your intimacy in your relationship. And to do that, you start creating moments and experiences, and you tap it in, and you both talk about it and say, wow, that was great. Look how much fun we had, or how nice that felt, and how loved we felt. And then you just continue doing that until the past is pushed behind you.
Very interesting. So, but if you find like everything is hardwired, is it better just to go ahead and seek professional advice? I mean, I know you do couples counseling, but do you ever have people that come to you that maybe without their significant other and say, hey, I'm kind of lost here, what do I do?
Yeah, absolutely. I see a lot of couples, but a lot of times I tell the couple, hey, I want to see you individually because your issues are so deep and we need to get past this trauma and these conditioned belief systems so that you can have a better relationship with your partner.
So it's not a taboo thing to do. One person might just need an extra TLC.
Absolutely. It's not taboo at all. We should be able to talk about things and let it go. In order for us to heal, we have to talk about it and release what we have inside.
All right, Dr. Gina, it's always such a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And you're going to find Dr. Gina's advice on BloomTampaBay.com. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. You're watching Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging. We begin where your checkup ends. Call now, 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today. Welcome back. More than half of Americans experience trauma in their lifetime, and many bury that pain. Here with why it's important to get help and talk to professionals is the founder of the Trauma Survivor's Guide to Life Abundantly, Dana Rutherford. Dana, welcome to Bloom.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about your own personal journey that led you to founding this incredible organization that helps people.
Yeah, so I am a domestic violence survivor. I was married to my ex-husband for about almost 15 years. And before that, unfortunately, my parents passed away. And so I was an 18-year-old girl, got married young, had kids, and then was in this situation of a domestic violence. And so I decided to get out. I had to show my boys what a strong woman could do. Went back to school, got my degree. And in that, I went on this journey of finding myself. And I was like, you know what? I need to help other people find themselves too. And so that's where the Life Abundantly comes.
You know, today we're talking about difficult conversations to have, and you say it's incredibly important to be honest with somebody else, at least one person, about what you're going through.
Yes, so if it's a friend, of course, that's a little easier because a girl to girl, you can kind of share, but when it's your romantic partner, it's super important that you can be comfortable in that. I'm not saying the first date, you should be like, hi, this is so-and-so, and share all your stuff. But if you see a potential in a partner, you definitely want to be honest. Honesty is key because in that it allows a fairness between the both of you to have what you need and for them to have what they need in the conversation. But you have to share if you feel like it's going to go somewhere, and you have to just see how that goes from there.
And I know you're saying don't overshare, but what kinds of things are you talking about?
I remarried, and so I eventually had to have that conversation that was uncomfortable. And I just started with I was pretty open and honest. I have children, I have the domestic violence situation, I don't have my parents, so this is my life. It's a little crazy. Are you in it for it? Because I have children. So it depends. I think if you're just wanting to kind of date, you can be a little more casual, but if you have children involved and you're wanting to really have a partner that you can share parenting with, I think that you need to just be honest with what you've been through.
Talk to me about, you know, how you are now personally helping others through their tough journeys.
So we do lots of things with the Trauma Survivor's Guide to Life Abundantly. We do a lot of content creation. We're having our first event, a women's conference, where we're going to showcase all women who are rocking life after trauma. We do blogs. We do a video series where we talk to women who are doing amazing things in business. But we also align ourselves with many nonprofits so that we can then do fundraisers and things for people that are in need.
Why is it important to you to build this community of sorts for women?
Our slogan is to rebrand the trauma survivor. We have to rebrand this because people think trauma and they think gloom and doom. And so just psychologically, if you're going through trauma and you see those images, you start to feel gloom and doom about your situation. Our hopes is that we can spread awareness that you can do amazing things after trauma, and you can go and build your dreams and have a life that is abundant.
So it's almost like you're building, wind beneath the wings of other women to let them know, you're not alone.
Yes.
We're going to help you fly.
We definitely advocate for women and men, but women tend to be our target, and we definitely advocate for trauma survivors. We speak at different places. I've spoken at even the Pasco County Courthouse to talk to their whole team about surviving domestic violence, and they just started an empowerment room for women that are wanting to do orders of protection, and just needing to feel empowered to sit and write that out. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've never been in that situation before, it might be hard to understand. People might be watching. I always like to play devil's advocate for the viewer of just walk away, just leave, but it's not that easy, especially many times because there's financial ties. There's things that have already been deep-rootedly put into place to make it difficult for a victim to walk.
It's very difficult, and it's very easy to blame the victim, especially when you see them going back, which it can be frustrating when it's your loved one and you just want them to get out. But unfortunately, not only are our brains hardwired to physically feel like we need this person, we also deal with the finances. Where are we going to go? I had nowhere to go. The shelters were full, actually, when I called. And so there's this need for not just housing, but then you have custody. Having to co-parent, there's a whole abuse that they don't talk about with that. It's very difficult to co-parent with your abuser.
And do you help people with that as well?
Yes, I give resources. So I know a lot of nonprofits. I know a lot of the bigger, the smaller nonprofits in the area that I will help to connect a survivor with a resource. I don't deal as much in the crisis, but I can definitely help get them the help they need within the crisis, and then come back to me for the day-to-day life after. And it's a fun journey. It's a up and down, you laugh, you cry, and that's what we like to highlight.
Yeah, well, I have to say, whenever you're going through anything difficult in life, it always helps to have a roadmap, because you don't know where to turn in many cases, and it sounds like you're kind of bringing a lot under one umbrella, and I think that's really incredible that you're doing that.
Thank you. Yes, we try to just spread awareness, spread hope. All the colors on our website are bright. We just want to make sure that people know that if you've been through something, you can make it, and you can actually have a great life after.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
All right, if you or anyone you know needs help, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, available 24 hours a day at 800-799-7233. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. Welcome back. We are celebrating outstanding women in Tampa Bay during International Women's Month, and that includes our next guest, who leads Constellations Culinary Group's Bistro at the Sarasota Art Museum of Ringling College, Executive Chef Caitlin Dangarin. Chef Caitlin, welcome to Bloom.
Thank you so much for having me.
So talk to me a little bit about your farm-to-table passion.
Yeah, so, Florida has great produce. I'm classically trained Italian, and the Italian cuisine is all based around seasonality and local stuff. And so when I moved to Sarasota, I was really interested in finding really beautiful local products. Luckily in Sarasota, we have wonderful things. We have great dairy, we have great honey. And so that's kind of what I built Bistro around, is being super local and sustainable.
All right, so talk to me about some of the ingredients and how we should be making our salad.
Okay, so I'm doing a chopped salad today. I always have a chopped salad on my menu. A really good chopped salad you should be able to eat with a spoon. So it's kind of all about how you cut everything. So these are little gems. They're like a baby radicchio or a baby romaine. And they're just a little sweeter and nice and tender. So what you want to always make sure you're doing is cut down the middle, and then go ahead and make another cut.
Okay.
So that it's very small, because when you do these salads, you want everything to really be nice and bite-sized. I'm doing a spring one today. Again, just seasonal. The great thing about spring is everything's like nice and tender and beautiful green veggies, and so that's what we're kind of gonna start with today.
Okay.
So we have also some radicchio. This is something that I use all of the time that people are scared of usually. It's an Italian lettuce. It's a little bit bitter, but it really provides like not only really great flavor into the dish, but really bright colors. And you know, you eat with your eyes first, so it's really nice to add a little bit extra.
I like it.
We're gonna put a little bit of that in the bowl. And then everything else we have is perfect for spring. So asparagus, perfect spring item. Again, always just snap it and it's perfect. And I actually always put this in raw in the salad. So almost everything that we put in the chopped salad is raw. It provides different levels of crunch to it, and I always say your salad shouldn't be boring, and you should be wanting to go back and eat another bite, and so that's kind of how we accomplish this.
Okay.
So right here I have some asparagus tips, again, all raw, so they're nice and crunchy.
And again, I like you're sticking to the eat it with the spoon mentality. It's cut perfectly.
Exactly. Then we have some snap peas that I just chop up, some radishes, which are always really nice in the spring, some English peas, and that's it. And then the dressing is what makes it. That there's always a key to it. So everything is nice and bright and fresh. You want to balance it out with something that has a little bit of fat to it. So I make this Dia Verde dressing, which my husband calls avocado ranch.
All right, I like that. His name is easier. I'm going to be calling it that too.
Yeah, avocado ranch. And basically what it is, it's avocado, creme fraiche, and just all the spring herbs. So we've got some parsley, some dill, some chives in there. So we just put a nice little dollop in there.
And you don't need to overpower your salad with a lot of dressing.
Exactly, and the romaine and the radicchio really like take a lot of that creamy dressing, so it's kind of nice.
All right.
And then we kind of finish this with a really fun sharp cheese. So you, again, same thing, you really don't need a lot of the dressing because you have all that.
Okay.
So we'll take it and put it in the bowl.
This is looking good.
Yeah.
I like a good salad.
Nice, exactly. Everybody loves a good salad. It's nice and light. And then for a little bit of toastiness, I add breadcrumbs. You want to add the breadcrumbs?
Sure, absolutely.
So this is basically bread that I just toast in garlic butter, and then I just puree a little bit. So it's a super easy, you know, way to use those bread ends that nobody in my household will eat.
Okay.
So that's good for that.
That's actually a great idea. Yeah. Nobody in my house eats them either.
Nobody eats them, right?
The birds in the backyard do.
Exactly. And then I'm using ricotta salata. So this is a sheep's milk cheese. And it's kind of like pecorino. It's just got a little bit of tartness to it, and it's nice and bright on the finish. So then I just take this, and I just grate a little bit over the top.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
freshly grated cheese.
Always freshly grated. And there you go. That's it.
I love it. Well, that is a beautiful salad. Congratulations. I know people in Sarasota celebrate, and we appreciate you driving all the way up to the Tampa Bay area to make this amazing salad for us.
No, it was great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so what we're going to do is you can watch us put this all together because we're going to post this story on bloomtampabay.com, but we'll also share the recipe with you so you can make it at home with your family and friends. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. There is a lot of buzz about measles activity here in Florida and nationwide. Here with more is top Tampa pediatrician, Dr. David Berger. Dr. Berger, it's always so great to see you.
Good to see you too.
So let's start with the good news. The Florida cases, we haven't heard of any more since those initial outbreaks that people were buzzing around, even with Polk County here in the Tampa Bay area. But how long is the incubation period?
So the incubation period is 1 to 2 weeks. So between 1 to 2 weeks after you're exposed, that's typically when symptoms will first appear. A person themselves, they're contagious when the rash comes out, which is kind of the second part of the disease. First, there's just regular flu-like symptoms. And then the typical rash comes out. A person themselves is contagious from 4 days before the rash until 4 days after the rash.
Okay, so there was another big alarm that we just heard about, in the Midwest. Is this something that we need to be concerned about on an ongoing basis?
Well, the issue is that measles is one of the most contagious infections in the world. 90% of people who don't have immunity, if they're exposed, they're going to catch it. So that's the issue. I mean, other diseases, I mean, we know people who were exposed to COVID who didn't get it, but you're pretty much, if you don't have immunity towards it, you're probably going to catch it if you're exposed.
Okay, so for if your kids are inoculated, and I'm sure I am too, like as adults, do we need to worry about this, of being up to date on our shots?
Yeah, I mean, it's not typically something that's given any additional shots after the
Okay.
initial 2 from when we are children. You know, one can always do a blood test called an IgG titer, and that will tell you whether for sure you have the antibodies. So whether you've had the disease itself, whether you've had 1 or 2 vaccines, if you have antibodies, you're protected.
Okay, what should you tell a family who's concerned about their child and they might be susceptible?
Well, I mean, again, how are we defining susceptible? Okay, so if a child has had 2 vaccines, I would say there's a 97% chance, which is what the data shows, that you won't catch it. And even if you do, it will be very mild. There's about a 92% chance that you're protected with 1. So even the kids who may have 1, but because they're not old enough to get a second one, there's still a very, very good chance they're going to be protected. So it's really the people who have not had any vaccines whatsoever, or people who are immunocompromised, who their vaccine may not have worked or because they don't have an immune system to make the antibodies to fight it off, then that would be the other susceptible situation.
Okay, and then, you know, a lot of things, you know, people get different messaging. So what did Florida's Surgeon General say as opposed to other medical professionals?
So standard of care, according to the CDC, World Health Organization, is that if there's measles around and a person is susceptible, that susceptible person should be kept out of school, kept out of the environment for 21 days.
Okay.
What came out of Florida was not that. It was more, this is what the guidelines are, but you could do what you want. And that, a lot of people thought that was pretty irresponsible because there's no data that would support that, where there's a lot of data that says and that's to stop the spread. Because again, if one person catches it, that's one thing. If one person gives it to 20 more people and then they give it to 20 more people, and that's 400 people. So the real big part of the isolation is to stop the spread of it happening. You know, like, it doesn't mean that kid won't get it, but you know, if it could take 2 weeks for that kid to show symptoms, and he's been exposed, who knows, and then they just get a flu-like illness for a couple days, and they're even contagious during that period before the rash starts. They could have been passing along to everybody. So if there's no one in the school that the virus is there, pulling all those susceptible kids out immediately will stop the spread.
Dr. Berger, thank you so much. We really appreciate when you come and shine knowledge for all our Bloom viewers as to what we need to do and what we need to expect. So thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to share this story on BloomTampaBay.com. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. It's time for today's Bloom trivia question. Which country has the highest inflation? Venezuela, Argentina, or the United States? The answer is Venezuela at nearly 1,200%. Sudan comes in second with 340%. Well, thank you so much for tuning into Bloom today. You can catch Bloom anytime by following us on social media. We're on all major platforms, so get a behind-the-scenes look at all of the innovative, breakthrough health and wellness conversations and incredible guests that we have right here on Bloom. And don't forget to check out our podcast, The Bloom Health Club. You can catch it live on Facebook and YouTube on Mondays at 2 p.m. We take a deep dive and have extended conversations with some of the top guests that we have right here on Bloom. Of course, you can stream episodes anytime on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Well, we hope you'll tune in again on the next Bloom presented by Lifeguard Imaging. Come along for a tour of Sarasota's Rise Up Cafe, dedicated to inclusion, jobs, dignity, and a great cup of coffee. And the importance of teaching kids about money at an early age. Stay healthy, everyone, and I will see you on the next Bloom. Call now 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today.